if we can confirm those. I thank Councillor Rain for covering for me. I had another meeting, so thank you. Oh, everybody happy with the accuracy of the minutes?
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much. And then we are on to the meat of the agenda. Item 4, pages 13 to 28 is the service delivery performance report. Andy, I believe you're taking that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this report covers the first 6 months of the year, so from April through to the end of September. So during this first half of 23-24, we've attended a total of 5,430 incidents. This is quite a decrease from last year, same period last year, 16.4% decrease, and really it's because of that extreme summer we had last year in 22, and we've actually attended over 1,200 less fires in this period as we did last year. So where that leaves us then, last year we attended 11,343 fires over the course of the year, but this year anticipating that number is going to drop down to somewhere in the region of about 10,000. Figure 1 under 2.3 really shows where that difference has come from. That graph there shows the increase in the incidents that we had last July and August in particular. So when we look at a breakdown of incident types over the last 12 months, which is shown in figure 2, fires have returned to follow the traditional pattern of really being lower throughout the autumn and winter, then peaking in the spring and almost flattening off over the summer period. So we've returned to that traditional trend that we would normally expect. What we have found is false alarms are averaging just above 400 per month over the last 12 months and have peaked this August at 476. And special service calls have remained relatively constant throughout the 12-month period, averaging about 220 per month. Figure 3 under 2.5 shows the breakdown by district, and no surprise, as we report every quarter, the City of Nottingham has experienced the most incidents over the 6 months with over 1,500. And this quarter it's Rushcliffe who has had the least. 2.6 breaks down the incidents by priority type. So for us, a P1 incident, just to remind members, are those that pose the immediate threat to human life or the risk of severe injury. They are the most serious incidents that we attend. P2 pose a high risk to the environment, to society, to property or heritage. And P3 are the ones that pose a potential hazard to life, the environment, society, property and heritage, but are also those ones that are known to have a low hazard to human life. So that graph shows the breakdown by month of what we attend. Thankfully, the majority of incidents we attend are those P3 incidents. So a key target within our CRMP is that all emergency incidents will be attended on average within 8 minutes. This is from the time the first appliance is mobilised to the time it arrives in attendance to the incident. Now, during the reporting period, we are outside of that target. The average attendance time has been 8 minutes and 14 seconds. So what we have found and what we believe is this increase in the first half of 23-24 is linked to the introduction of the new mobile data terminals on the fire appliances that were installed in June. Now, we are currently doing a lot of investigation and service, a lot of remedial work around that issue and monitoring the performance, and we will come back and report to you in a future committee around the performance. Now what we have is that figure 5 really shows how the attendance time has increased in June, July, August and September, which obviously links the installation of these new mobile data terminals. Now what we have had, I can inform you now, is we've had a software update last week, which we feel will hopefully resolve some of the issues that we've been experiencing. Little bit too early to say at this point because it was literally done last week, but we are hopeful that some of the issues were linked to the software. So we will be monitoring that closely over the next few weeks and months to see if that has rectified at least some of the problems. The report then goes on to talk about on-call station availability, which is obviously very, very important to us. The service targets an 85% availability across our on-call sections. Now, over the reporting period, we've averaged 86%, so just above target, which is good. Figure 6 shows a breakdown per station, and over the period, we have had 9 of our on-call stations performing above that 85% target. However, we've had 2 that have fallen below our minimum standard, just fractionally below our minimum 70% standard. We reported in a previous committee around on-call recruitment and the efforts that go into on-call recruitment and some of the challenges we face. But what I'm happy to report that we've been successful in recruiting 34 new on-call employees who will become trainees with us over the course of 23-24, which is really high, good numbers for us. And clearly, that influx of on-call trainees will improve our attendance going forward. Figure 7 under 2.10 shows a longer term look at on-call availability, and you can see from that stretches all the way back to quarter 1 1920, and you can see from that over the long period of time there's only been 2 periods where our overall performance has 2 quarters that has dropped below the 85%. Both of those quarters being quarter 2, which is summer periods where obviously annual leave and holiday periods become a challenge as well. Now, as has been previously requested, the report goes on to talk about specifics around on-call availability at our day shift crewing stations. So we start with Ashfield. Now, over 24 hours, availability at Ashfield has been 86.7% over the reporting period, which is a significant improvement on 22-23, where it was just below 81%. During the daytime between 0800 and 1900, availability has been 72.8%, which again is an improvement on the previous year. And over the night between 1900 and 0800, availability has been 98.5% for one appliance, 20.7% for 2 appliances, which again are both improvements on 22-23. Now, this will be the last time we report on-call availability at Ashfield, because as you will know, with the resource and to risk work stream that's been updated to yourselves at the full fire authority, Ashfield will be returning to a 24/7 whole-time station from the 29th of November. Okay, so we'll move on to Retford, which will be remaining as a day shift station. Now, over a 24-hour period, on-call appliances have been available for just short of 80% of the time at Retford, which is actually a dip in performance compared to the previous year. And that dip in performance carries through between 0800 to 1900, where it's been available 63.4% of the time, and over the night time period, where we've had 93.7% for one appliance and 14.6% for 2. It's all a slight dip in performance from where we were in 22-23, and that has been because we've had on-call staff leave the section, unfortunately, direct impact on availability. The good news, however, is those 34 trainees that we're welcoming into service this year, 5 of them will be being stationed at Retford, which will have a significant impact and improvement on on-call availability there. We go on to look at availability of our whole-time appliances. Now, we monitor availability of whole-time appliances because there are occasions when they become unavailable due to things such as mechanical fault, servicing, where we have insufficient crewing levels, where the crews have to replenish contaminated PPE, where they undertake out-of-county training, or for crew welfare. Now, we target that the appliances are available 98% of the time for our whole-time stations, and I'm pleased to report table 1 there shows that every one of our whole-time appliances has been better than that target over the last 6 months. Key part of our ongoing commitment to ensure resources are mobilised effectively are the metrics we look at for our joint fire control with Derbyshire. So we start off by looking at 999 calls being answered within 7 seconds, and we target that 96% of calls are answered within 7 seconds. Quarter 1, 23-24, these metrics for joint fire control only focus on quarter 1 rather than the 6-month period, just because of data availability at the time of the report being submitted. So in quarter 1, our performance dipped slightly to 95% of calls being answered within 7 seconds. But the second key metric we look at is call handling time. Now, the target for this is that calls are answered within 89 seconds. And in quarter 1, our performance far exceeded that, where on average calls were being dealt with in 82 seconds, which is positive. We consider mobilisation system availability. Now, there are periods when we classify the mobilisation system as being unavailable. Now, this is at times where perhaps it's having a software update or where there faults occur which result in situations such as officers' pages not working properly. Now, in Q1, the mobilised system was available for 98.7% of the time, which is just a fraction below our 99% target. Work is continuing, as it always has done, to address some of the issues we have with the tri-service mobilising system. We continue to work closely with the supplier to identify any faults and rectify them as they occur. That is the response section of the report. Now, I'm going to run through the prevention and protection section next because unfortunately Bryn's not able to be here today. Mm-hmm. Is there any questions on the response element before I move on?
Anyone?
I know my response is doing a really good job by the sounds of it, looking at those figures.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to raise, I mean, you've gone through it, and just to note, obviously, we've had problems for people who've not been on the committee before in Southall, in Harworth. It's not particularly great. And obviously, you've mentioned we've got the new colleagues 34 that hopefully address that. That's the only concern, I suppose, that I've particularly got on that. The availability, though, when it says Q3 here on 219, that one, obviously, there's been some sort of issue there, to say the least. It's gone just about 80%.
Sorry, which one are we looking
so
at?
So on page 21 on the top, mobilising system availability, and then you've got the second, the Q3 of 22 to 23. Obviously, that's dropped significantly.
Yes, yes, it did. Now we covered that in a previous committee meeting. I can't remember off the top of my head. There were some significant issues that quarter.
Right.
They didn't result in issues in terms of appliances actually being turned out, but they were software updates and certain things that went on. Some of it's planned maintenance with the system. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact details why that was, but no, we do recognise at Q3 there were some unusual issues with the system.
I mean, other than that, as Devontae says, it's really good, isn't it, in terms of the targets we've been hitting and some of the improvements. There's areas where we have to focus, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you. The 34 staff sounds positive. Are they in the right place? I mean, Retford is...
Yes, I haven't given the full breakdown, but it's quite a nice split across the different sections. I can provide that to Councillor later if needs be. I think every single one of our 16 sections will be welcoming at least one trainee, with obviously that really significant improvement at Retford where we really need it. So yes, really, really positive and sort of testament to the work of our local support team in getting people through.
Very good. Mm-hmm. Anything else on this section?
You know the 34 groups, 5 schools to Retford, will there be any redundancies or will it be...
Oh no, absolutely not. No, these are 5 additional. We have lost some from Retford over the course of the last 12 months, which has impacted that availability at Retford. That's been reported on. But no, absolutely not. No, these are additional to what we've got. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to go on to
Lovely, thank you. So prevention and protection. So we start with prevention. So over the 6-month period, same reporting period as the response element, we've completed 7,719 safe and well visits. So that puts us well on track to make our 14,000 target. We will exceed that 14,000 target this year, which is really welcome, obviously. Of those, nearly 8,000 that were completed over that 6-month period, 51% were delivered to people over the age of 65, 43% to people who classified themselves as having a disability. Now, they are key metrics for us because obviously those two factors have a significant impact on vulnerability and are a really key part of our Charlie profile. Just to give some comparison, the national average around those stats is 49% of safe and well visits nationally are delivered to over 65s. We're at 51%. 36% of people who identify as having a disability, we're at 43%. So I think it gives real credibility to how we target and how we educate our partners who refer to us around vulnerabilities. One thing I didn't touch on, the number of safe and well visits that we are delivering is above the national average for the sector as well, which is additionally positive. So figure 11 breaks down delivery per month. And then the report goes on some of the other activities, that prevention activities, community safety activities that we deliver. So between April and September, our education team has been carrying out safety initiatives and concentrating on themes such as water rescue, road safety, general fire safety, and specific arson-related input. But our key activity over the last 12 months has been our safety zone events. Now, our safety zone events are big multi-agency events that are delivered to Year 6 pupils. So these are 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds across the county. And over the period, we've had 2 of these big events delivered. One's been delivered at Ashfield Fire Station, and one's been delivered at Home Pierpont. So the one in Home Pierpont was delivered in September, so it's quite recent. We had 774 pupils attend that from county schools and 662 from city schools. The event that took place at Ashfield in June, we had 490 pupils. So really good numbers. Collectively, around 2,000 pupils have gone through this programme of safety zone that's organised, coordinated, delivered by us. Further to that, we continue to work on our fire setters programme, which targets young, as it says on the tin, really young people who are starting to set fires and experiment with playing with fire. And over the period April to September, we've had 59 individuals referred to us to be part of that programme to eradicate that behaviour. They're the prevention elements. Any questions on prevention before we move on to protection?
Anyone? No, good news.
Okay, thank you.
Just quick.
Oh,
Of course.
Sorry, just very. No, that's safety zone. How often do that? You do that event?
We run 3 events per year. So traditionally we run one at Ashfield Station, one at Home Pierpont, and then one up at Worksop College, the Ramby Prep School there. So quite a nice spread across the county, targeting different schools, and we aim to have about 3,000 children go through that programme a year. Yeah.
sorry, Nigel.
Just, excuse me. Where do you get your fire setter individual targets? Are they police or?
Yeah, it's a mixture of things such as like the police, youth offending teams will refer into us to deliver the sort of practical sessions and the conversations that we then have with those young people.
That's good.
Okay.
No notes? Protection then.
Protection, thank you. Okay, so protection elements. So as you are aware, the completion of 1,500 fire safety audits is a key CRMP commitment. That first 6 months of the year, we have completed 660. So slightly below the target, but it's actually the most we've ever achieved in that 6-month period. And we're on target this year to deliver more than we ever have done before, which is good. So of those 660 fire safety audits, 158 of them required informal action and 24 required formal notices to be issued. So again, similar to the prevention element where we have some assurance around we're targeting the right people, I think this is evidence that we are targeting the right businesses in those audits. So figure 12 shows the audit numbers that we have completed month by month over a period of years and clearly displays that increasing delivery and performance in the numbers we are achieving. So in addition to actually delivering those 660 fire safety audits, a key part of our fire safety inspector's role is to support our response managers who go out and deliver business safety checks. So another key metric in our CRMP is the delivery of 1,000 business safety checks this year. Now, these are delivered by response supervisory managers at perhaps slightly more low-risk business premises where they will go in and undertake a check around safety. So we're targeting 1,000 this year. Up until the end of September, we had completed 386 business safety checks. Now, we have a slight imbalance at the minute between those that are qualified to do so, because to be able to undertake one of these checks, you have to have undertaken a fire protection qualification and be warranted to actually go and give that advice to a business. Now, we have a slight disparity at the minute between the number of supervisory managers we have that are qualified to undertake them. So we have certain managers which do not have anybody qualified at the minute. So that is why we're slightly behind the target. The good news is that from November, from next month, we have the next cohort of qualifications being undertaken, and we believe that 30 additional supervisory managers will be going through the education process around business safety checks over the course of the coming year. So we are taking significant steps to address that deficiency and really manage the delivery of business safety checks. One area we are looking to is, as we get close to Christmas, we're going to have a couple of weeks of action around the delivery of business safety checks. We're going to target high street retail outlets, which will no doubt have increased stock levels and other potential risks over that period of time, and really target increased delivery of business safety checks prior to the end of the calendar year. There's a number of other activities our fire protection department undertakes. So they have undertaken a whole range of bits that are listed in 2.31, such as post-fire inspections, enforcement notices, prohibition notices, licence and consultations. There's quite a whole expanse of work that's undertaken by that department. Between April and September, the service has responded to 2,133 false alarms. Now, these are broken down in 2.33 to false alarm malicious, where we've received 52 of those, false alarm good intent, 274, and then false alarm apparatus, which is the vast majority of that at over 1,800. Now, that 2,133 false alarms actually is a 16% increase on the same period in 22-23. Now, under our CRMP, we actually are targeting a 3% decrease in unwanted fire signals. So we are quite in excess of where we want to be with unwanted fire signals at the minute. Now, agenda item 5, Damien is going to be presenting a report that details our approach to reducing the unwanted fire signals. So that will follow my summary here. The CRMP also targets a 3% reduction in unwanted lift rescues, and I'm happy to report we've responded to 92 lift rescues between April and September, which is a 3% decrease on where we were last year. So that is better news in the protection world. Now, the Building Safety Act has now passed royal assent, and the government has continued to engage with the sector on the implementation of the Act, which commenced at the start of this month. Now, the Building Safety Act has created a new building safety regulator, with the Health and Safety Executive being appointed to lead on that piece of work. Now, what that means for us is we will be part of a multidisciplinary team, regional multidisciplinary team, to perform the functions that are required by that business safety regulator. For us as an individual service, that means that we will be providing one of our fire safety inspectors to support that team. On the back of that, though, we have received Home Office funding. That means that we can backfill that post, that there shouldn't be any detrimental impact on the delivery of our targets and the work that our fire safety inspectors do. Now, the Fire Safety Regulations 2022 became law at the start of 23, and these place a number of statutory duties on responsible persons and the service, particularly regarding properties over 18 metres in height. For example, they place a duty on the service to provide a means of receiving and monitoring information from building owners related to external wall systems constructions, deficiency in fire safety equipment and building plans. And we have an ongoing process that we have developed in conjunction with the NFCC to really ensure that we are operating within national best practice in regards to those new regulations. And just finally, the service continues to play an active role in supporting the development of new fire safety guidance in buildings, which it regulates. So the Fire Protection Department continues to work very, very closely in partnership with the NFCC in actively supporting consultations to really drive industry best practice. So that is the end of the report. So any questions on the protection elements?
Yeah, no, so, I mean, generally good news. Obviously, the unwanted fire signals, Damien's going to be doing. I mean, the only concern I've got on it, and I'm sure that it's where you mentioned it yourself, is in 230 in terms of business safety checks, and we're significantly down due to staffing. And you are assured that's going to be improved, though, isn't it, with the 30 new staff?
Yeah, it will be improved over coming years, and we will get as close to the target this year as we possibly can. There's a lot of focus on performance management around it and really driving as much as we possibly can.
Just on that account, so I think in terms of where our performance monitoring and management has come over the last 5 years, really, we've got really close scrutiny of things now. So we have the Service Delivery Evaluation Assurance Group, which Andy chairs. Part of that is looking at metrics such as safe and well figures now. We are higher than we need to be. We're a target, which is fantastic. But it's also about then redirecting the resource within response mainly, where we would deliver most of the services en masse, making sure we can target that so we can tweak our delivery to make sure we are hitting the performance targets as we need to. So there's a lot of work going into that, and Andy keeps a close eye on it for us.
Anyone else? Nigel?
Just on business checks, again, do you actually focus on specific areas? Do you say you'll go out on a daily basis, for example, and is that information gained from various sources such as the public or other services, etc.?
It is. We have a programme of those businesses that almost don't warrant a full audit or don't form part of our sort of risk management about hire premises. We are targeting those sort of often smaller businesses, and we focus on certain themes. So, as I was saying earlier, around our focus around those couple of weeks leading up to Christmas will be around retail premises, because they are, at that time of year, they are likely to need a little bit of support and advice around keeping their staff safe, really. So yeah, it comes from a range of different areas, but we do focus on specific businesses at specific times of year, really.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Right. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Good. We are going on to item 5, which is reducing unwanted fire signals, pages 29 onwards. Damien,
Thank you,
please.
Chair. So, as nicely introduced by Andy, we'll cover the area of unwanted fire signals. And really just to start, just to put a few things into context and to make sure clarity, there's a lot of acronyms and abbreviations that we use, so just to make sure everyone understands those bits. So when we respond to incidents, often the cause of those is an automatic fire alarm, and many of those are managed by call handling centres. So they're classed as AFAs, automatic fire alarms, and we receive a call and we'll proceed to those. And we have a policy around how we attend those, often with one appliance, and we carry out that on a risk-based process. And we also do call challenging within our control room when we receive those. So if it's safe to do so, we have a list of premises that we would call challenge at, where we have people, has the alarm gone off, and then is there any sign of fire, and to try and mitigate and manage our response. If we attend that incident and it's found to be a fault with the system, it should then be classified as an unwanted fire signal. So as Andy touched on, we also have AFAs that can be malicious, so breakage of call points, people maliciously calling the fire service. We also have ones with good intent, where there is a genuine suspicion of a fire, we will obviously attend, and there's that, and then there's the unwanted fire signals. And this paper particularly focuses on the reduction of unwanted fire signals that we attend. Again, as Andy mentioned, and as members will be aware, our Community Risk Management Plan, CRMP, gives us a target of a 10% reduction year on year. Now, in hindsight, that has been quite challenging, because the first year of our CRMP coincided with data collection around COVID, and obviously a lot of business premises weren't in activity as much, and we saw a lower number of unwanted fire signals being attended. As well, nationally, we have seen the number of unwanted fire signals increasing. Last year, there's an 8% increase nationally, and that's replicated here in Nottinghamshire. And in the background to the paper, it shows that in 2022-23, we attended an 8% increase on the previous year. As Andy has mentioned, this year, like for like against last year, we've seen a further 16% increase, which I'll come on to the detail around that. Now, members received a paper back in January to the Community Safety Committee in terms of a proposed approach which looked at a number of measures, and one of those was around a decision not to attend automatic fire alarms at hospital premises between 7 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the evening. Following that meeting, members asked for further assurances and review to be undertaken, and raised a number of queries and concerns around that proposal. and that has now been explored and developed, and that is the main body of this report here today. So a bit of a background to you, hopefully it all makes sense in good context. So following that report in January, we undertook a consultation both with representative bodies and also contacting the hospitals across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. Now that includes the large NHS hospitals, but also smaller private practices as well. And it was nice to see that 86% of those responded to our consultation in relation to the proposed changes and management of unwanted fire signals. Along with that, we commissioned some further data review and some real deep dive into an understanding both locally and nationally around the attendance at unwanted fire signals. And the amalgamation of those two bits of work really highlighted to us that the vast majority of occurrences of unwanted fire signals are isolated to two premises, and those being the City Hospital and Queen's Medical Centre, which are disproportionately high in terms of the level of unwanted fire signals that we're attending. Now, the good news is our fire protection management team have a very strong relationship with those healthcare providers, and we have regular meetings. Our standard approach to where, if we attend a certain number of unwanted fire signals, develops a trigger. So if you have more than 6, we'll carry out a full fire safety audit. In fact, at those hospitals, we have a specific management meeting every frequency in terms of making sure we have an ongoing relationship with them. The review of the consultation and the review of the data really highlighted that a more specific risk-based approach, in conjunction with those hospitals that are presenting the highest risk and under the delegated responsibilities of the Chief Fire Officer, so in terms of our operational response, is now a more preferred and proposed solution rather than a wide-ranging policy change. So it's to update members, we won't be looking to progress the non-attendance at automatic fire alarms hospitals across the board, and we'll be meeting with the management teams at those hospitals to directly address the issues directly with those two sites. We have are working to organise management team meetings with them, and we're going to more closely monitor the unwanted fire signals that occur at those two premises, so we can identify the actual problems at those sites. And to give credit to Nottingham University Hospitals, a lot of effort and investment is going in to try and address that as well, because a big part of this is around the systems as well as the processes, so there is continued work there. As I mentioned earlier, Andy chairs the Service Delivery Evaluation Assurance Group, and that keeps a very close eye on performance. And that has given us the opportunity to highlight some particular trends. There is, as I've mentioned, a continued increase in the number of unwanted fire signals attended by the service, which correlates to a national increase as well. That is underpinned by an increase of unwanted fire signals at hospitals, particularly the two that have been mentioned. But accompanying that, we've also seen a 50% increase in the number of unwanted fire signals from domestic dwellings. So these are particularly homes where sheltered housing or premises with independent living arrangements, things like call buttons for assistance or connected smoke detection to call centres. Again, working with colleagues through the National Fire Chiefs Council, it's a picture that's been replicated across the country, and we are going to explore working with the telecare call systems, their companies. It should be highlighted that's not a Nottinghamshire issue. Many of these call handling companies aren't located within the county, they're national companies, and we will be working with them and with the National Fire Chiefs Council to try and address this issue. The sort of juxtaposition in that problem is that these are our most vulnerable people in society. We see a vast increase in the number of people who have been cared for at home, and tragically, a number of our more recent fire fatality incidents that we've attended where people have died have been through people who've had these systems in place as well. So the risk is definitely high, and that is something we need to maintain and consider as we look to address how we reduce the number of unwanted or false alarms. So that gives you an overview in terms of where we are. We're very much on top of the performance. We very much have a plan around addressing that, but it's not going to be an easy solution in terms of reducing or meeting that target of the community risk management plan, and we will continue to apply focus there. The final point on the report is that members also approved a recommendation at the January committee to explore chargeable calls as a mechanism. And the key part of that is to explore that, and we'll be reporting back to members once we have further information or proposal around that. Again, a difficult a balance to strike in terms of making sure we have those premises that present the highest risk to communities, and we have a quality response to those, but also trying to reduce the number of false alarms as well. So that work is continuing through the prevention and protection area manager, and we'll report back to members with any proposals before they are progressed. So hopefully that gives you assurance that we are addressing this, that we are going to take a specific approach around the issues that we face, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. I think that's members will take some comfort around the two hospitals. I think we were nervous about the blanket approach. I think we're keen though to see what those solutions are, and if there's investment that will fix that. So I assume this will be an ongoing report that comes back to try and show us that. I was curious on two things. One was the unwanted fire signals from single domestic dwellings. There's this huge move from analogue that's taking place now. Lots of these boxes are being switched off, aren't they, effectively, as everyone goes onto these new Wi-Fi ones, and I'm wondering if there'll be some data that comes forward to show that that's fixing one of the problems, or whether it might exacerbate it. So that would be useful for us to know, because it's new technology is always challenging, so, and I guess I don't know, I don't understand it well enough. And then just finally on the chargeable stuff, will that come to us or the finance committee? It's a bit of a hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely a hybrid approach to that. We do have a chargeable calls policy at the moment, which has been approved by members previously a number of years ago. Any change to that, our proposal bring here is it's a service delivery perspective in terms of that. And again, we can.
I think members of this committee would want to know if they felt it had an impact. Anyone else? Sorry, I've hogged this on a little Nick.
No, I'm with you on the hospitals. I was on the committee and we were concerned about blanket on attendance in case there was an incident. I'm sure so that's reassuring. It is a worry in terms of the care situation. I know obviously we see it elsewhere in the council. Things are getting a bit desperate in terms of staffing. I think, I don't want to make a political point out of it, but I suspect it's nationwide that's the case, because you would think that if there was more than somebody around, you would reduce this. So I've got no solutions to that. It's just a concern, and unless we look at, there's got to be some responsibility at the other end as well, hasn't there? I know obviously if they're vulnerable and elderly, that's a difficult thing, but in some sheltered housing you think they'd have something in place that somebody would turn up or ring the fire service and say, sorry, Dora's pressed the wrong button or the toaster's off or whatever. I'm trying to be flippant, but I'm sure these are things that we're going out for. So, I mean, I don't know what to say there. That really is out of our hands, isn't it? I mean, doesn't appear there's a lot we can do.
To give you some assurance, we're working really closely with the Integrated Care Board, with Health and Wellbeing Board, work closely with the City and County Council and District Councils in terms of how to address this. There isn't a simple solution. There are more and more people staying in their own homes or in sheltered accommodation, and on many other parts of the sector that is the best thing to do for those people and for the individual themselves, but we've got to look at that. I think technology is a huge part of that, and the good news is this is a national focus. There is work going on nationally through the Prevention Committee, the National Fire Chiefs Council, to look at how we can address this. So there isn't a simple solution, I don't think, but it's definitely a solution that we're going to try and focus on.
Anyone else?
Just an observation, I suppose, that the improving healthcare situation for people living longer is just going to exacerbate the situation.
Yeah, there's a real challenge, and I know plans locally within city council plans are to try and improve and extend the number of people able to stay in their own homes. Part of the consultation on that, we've fed back into that consultation as well around these unintended consequences that can potentially be applied. So I think it very much comes down to partnership working, and we've got really strong partnerships across city and county. So we're keep a close eye on it. We've got a really good mechanism now to monitor that progress and to see what's happening, be able to report that and also address it.
No one else? All right, thank you, David. I think you are on the next one, which
sorry,
is
so you've got,
safeguarding. We do have, sorry, we have two recommendations on item 10, page 34. I assume everyone's happy to accept those before we move on.
Agreed.
So then safeguarding is the additional paperwork you've got, which it says page 35 of your main agenda, but it's the grey papers that are additionally there. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, this breaks down into two parts primarily in the report, and you will all be very aware of the national focus that there has been following the abhorrent findings of the London Cultural Review, the impacts around both fire and police in terms of safeguarding communities, both in their day-to-day lives, but also sadly when we have people who are very vulnerable, who are visited by employees across the country who have not lived up to the standards or the expected behaviours of both the Fire and Rescue Service and the police. So the first part of this report looks at new legislation which has been passed from recommendations from His Majesty's Inspectorate and the Home Office. There are now increased vetting of personnel. So this is the disclosure and barring services, and previously all of our staff underwent a basic check when they went through employment, and only those employees who were in high risk roles, so people within our prevention team, within the persons at risk team who dealt with the most vulnerable people, would have a higher level. That basic check just looked at any unspent convictions for those employees, prospective employees. Changes in legislation have now increased the ability for us to carry out standard checks through the DBS process, and that means that we can view any spent and unspent convictions as well, so people who have had previous convictions as well as ones which are current. Now that enables us to carry that out for all staff, volunteers and representatives of the Fire and Rescue Service, and it also comes with a recommendation from the National Fire Chiefs Council that they are carried out on a recurring basis throughout an employee's career with us. Now we do have a policy where if anybody is convicted of a criminal offence, they should report it to us, but at the moment we don't carry out any recurring checks to ensure that. So this will provide us with that opportunity, and the exact detail of how we're going to apply that is working its way through internal governance at the moment.
How many convictions that you've got on there, are they people within the service that have got previous convictions? What's the acceptable conviction that's historic versus one that obviously isn't? I kind of can guess which ones wouldn't be allowed, but it'd be good to maybe get into it.
Absolutely, yeah. So the guidance, the legislation requires us to have a clear policy and procedure around what is going to be raised as an issue, or what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in terms of spent convictions. Now the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act is very clear, and it sets out in the guidance that we need to understand or take into account a number of things, such as when that occurred. Somebody may have committed an offence many years ago, may have paid the price for that and be rehabilitated and be a perfectly fine and upstanding citizen and perfect for employment with us. Equally, it needs to look at the nature of the offence and the suitability of their role. So there are 6 criteria, I can't name them all off the top of my head, but there are 6 criteria which we're required to have a policy and procedure to address. And it means that we will look at that. So this is very much not around dragging up people's past, around holding people to account for something that they have already served the offence and have rehabilitated from that. But it's very much just around ensuring that safeguard and that approach to it. So that's all working its way through internal governance at the moment, but we just thought it was really important to update members that this is in progress now, and we have just run a new transferee process in terms of full-time employees. We're able to apply the standard checks to those employees as well, which ensures that high level of safeguarding. So that will be progressed through internal governance.
I was just going to follow up on that, just to say, in the last, say, 10 years, has anyone been dismissed from the fire authority for a previous conviction?
Not previous convictions. Now, we wouldn't have picked those up unless they'd been gone into a specific role where we felt the higher level of vulnerability. So individual working with, so we heard about the fire setters, they would have a higher level DBS check to make sure, because they've got one-on-one work with vulnerable children, young people, people in our persons at risk team as well, who go into vulnerable homes, work with the most vulnerable people in society who've had those higher checks. I'm sure that the standard checks will bring up occasions where people either apply for the roles or maybe people who are currently employed with us who have got very long spent convictions in their past. We will take each of those occasions on a case-by-case basis. Absolutely, again, just to reiterate really, this is not about punishing somebody for something that's been gone and is part of their past. It's just about ensuring safeguarding of our staff, but also of communities as well. So, but we'll take those on a case-by-case basis. There is a link within the paper on section 2.5 around the National Fire Chiefs Council guidance, which sets out explicitly what they expect fire and rescue services to be doing, and more information will be reported. It's also a recommendation that a further update is presented to members in 12 months' time that reviews all of the vetting outcomes from this year and the approach to safeguarding that's embedded, to make sure that members are given that information, Councillor Curry, in terms of what has occurred within that period. So in terms of the DBS checking, the high level of safeguarding for communities, that's where we are, and that's progressing through. Within the next few weeks we'll have had a policy and procedure through our internal governance to be progressed with that. I'm on to the next part around safeguarding, but any questions?
Nick was waiting.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I mean, it's a difficult, sensitive subject, this, isn't it, from what's been in the news. I mean, you know, the background to it, I'm sure colleagues know, is obviously certain services, particularly Metropolitan Police, there's a lot of investigations going on. People have committed horrific offences, mainly against women, and disgraced the service. And in some cases, it's alleged that this was known about beforehand. And there's a balance, as you say, between people who may have committed minor offences when they're children or done something else, and rehabilitation to employing people who've committed serious sexual offences or other things that we don't want. I mean, obviously, as councillors, we actually have in Nottingham City an enhanced DBS check on all of us for that very reason. And you would hope that everyone in the service going forward would have that. And obviously, you can only find out if people have committed offences. There's no 100% guarantee. But I do think it's good to regularly check that type of thing. You know, it's difficult and you want to forgive people, but at the same time, what we've seen in the news allegedly is unacceptable, and it's caused real lack of faith, and you know, women in particular, I think, have suffered, haven't they, as a result of, you know, certain people behaving in an appalling way.
We've got to do everything to uphold the trust and confidence of the people. We are very fortunate that our relationship with communities, and we need to do everything we can to ensure that. So this is very much around a proportionate and individual response to each needs to make sure that's done properly.
I was just going to actually, I think Nick's just raised a brilliant point there. Is there any plans in the future to have every member of the fire authority go through an enhanced CRB check? Because as Nick said, in the council we have that by default, whether you're front line, back office, doesn't matter. And I think just to kind of know your workforce, and you know, like you said, you're not going to kind of penalise anyone that's got past convictions when they were a child or something, but I think, you know, moving forward in today's day and age, it'd be something that'd be really, really, really good in terms of the overall safety, because I do understand the fact that you've got people that are working with members of the community, sometimes around children, and that's one aspect to it. But if you've got somebody that has got a previous conviction that's pretty serious, that isn't working on the front line, you're not going to know. And that's the catch-22. I think the best way I could put it is a bit like a ticking time bomb, because someone could question you later on to say, how come you weren't aware that this individual worked and committed an offence or things like that. So, and I don't think the financial impact of that is too much more expensive. We've all just gone through, we have them every year, don't we? But we've just gone through another set. So is there any reason why it's just a standard CRB check and not an enhanced CRB check, which, to be fair, most public sector organisations have that by default?
So we are looking at it. One of the parts of the papers coming through internal governance. Now, the national guidance is of the from the NFCC is around the standard checks and the frequency of those. We will continue definitely to have the enhanced ones for those people who have the access to the most vulnerable people in communities to ensure that. You're right, I don't believe the financial implications are very significant. They've got to be addressed. It is an extra burden on the budget, the whole recurring checks of that, and that's one consideration we've got to make within our current budget, which has already got its constraints. But that would not, the budget wouldn't negate the need to do if there was a requirement. I think it's very much around trying to have that standardised approach across all fire and rescue services. I think that's the way forward for that. As it comes through internal governance, it will be discussed. One of the options is that we could have enhanced across the board, but equally I think it's what we would then do with that information in relation to decisions we make nationally, and in the legislation it's decided that access to standard checks would be proportionate for the roles that our firefighters do day in, day out. So I think that's where we will be driven to try and keep that standardisation, but it will be a consideration as it comes through our internal governance processes.
It's a balance, isn't it? You don't want to intrude and you want to rehabilitate people, but what we're talking about is people who've committed, in many cases, allegedly quite a lot of serious sexual offences, to be frank. And often when they were actually in the job, that's the alleged happened in the police forces, and that's the problem, isn't it? Rather than dragging up stuff people did when they're 15.
And for reassurance, all of that would be disclosed under a standard check, most definitely. And I think that this is not a solution. Unfortunately, we see people who have never had any convictions or issues with the police or the legal system at all still carry out the most horrendous crimes and are found guilty about it. So I think we continue this with the cultural development of our organisation, really defining and making sure that we can maintain a consistent approach around our values and our expected behaviours of staff as well. So this is definitely just one part of that reassurance to communities, really.
How does it, I don't want to go to it, how does it also fit in, because some of the stuff's allegedly been around WhatsApps and other things, hasn't it, where people have made comments that obviously most people would find unacceptable. There's been a culture that is, I mean, is that any connection here, or have we looked into anything to do with that?
So we addressed this, and this is something we've been doing for a number of years. We have a really clear set of expected behaviours for all of our staff at every level, from chief fire officer through to every member of our staff and fire authority members, the code of ethics and the expected behaviour framework for the organisation. We're very clear around that, and whilst we hear stories around WhatsApp groups, we hear stories around activities of firefighters in people's homes, which clearly have no place in the sector or in society, to be honest. So all of this is just there's multiple layers of us assuring that we have the right people working for us and that the communities can trust us. So we will continue to do that. We have robust processes to investigate any allegations. We now have a confidential reporting line as well, so if anybody has any concerns and they don't feel that they can step forward, because that was found in both the London Review and other reviews recently, that people feared retribution or didn't want to be seen as somebody causing trouble. And so we've got a confidential reporting line that anyone can access from the whole of our workforce to call out unacceptable behaviour, and we have really strong processes to deal with that. So I'm confident if those occasions arose, we would deal with them robustly.
I was just going to add to what Nick said. I think the WhatsApp groups and things like that, and it's great that you've got a robust system in place with confidential reporting line. Would it be possible in the future to get kind of obviously a non-disclosed report on some of that activity? Because I think there's those particular confidential lines, someone can make a report and nothing happens, and then faith in that particular reporting system just doesn't work and no one's engaging with it. So I'm not sure if that's something that could be tabled in for the future.
There is a report going to the HR committee, which we definitely share with members.
That'd be brilliant.
Make sure that's done. So that actually started in the last month or so. So that will be going to the HR committee as a regular report on updates. Alongside, we have a discipline and grievance report that is updated. So we can share that with members more widely.
Just one more thing. I was thinking about this the other day when I was on fire authority. I mean, obviously it's difficult, but some of these, employees have a right to talk to each other and be on WhatsApps and have a laugh and all that. No one's trying to police that. We're talking about stuff that's gone way beyond anyone would think would reasonably be acceptable. And it's difficult if we're talking about the culture, I think, because I was talking to members of our LGBT connection community in our service, and they were telling me that there was nobody in a fire station who's come out as LGBTQ plus at all. Well, I mean, obviously we will have colleagues who are, and it says to you that obviously, because there's certain relationships people will have, won't they, like they do on frontline services, like police officers have, and I understand that, but also there's a balance between, well, obviously that's, some people can't be themselves or come out to a certain extent, and you know, we're trying to do things like that, and I think that's not unrelated to some of this. Obviously some officers have seen in other public services unacceptable behaviour, and it's just escalated, and they've not challenged it. Because from what I've seen and reported in some of the WhatsApp comments, most people will be reading out thinking that's obviously unacceptable. That's gone beyond having a laugh to, you know, this is like really a horrific comment and what people have done. So I don't know if there's anything else we can do culturally, because I was thinking in terms of that group is doing some good work for us, but it's different in the headquarters than it is in fire stations, if we're being honest. And I think it's having those difficult conversations, isn't it?
Yeah, and that definitely is the case. It's this is not a new theme. This is not something. It's not a flash in the pan. This is something that the service is really committed to addressing. We've got a fantastic staff network, which is doing great work in terms of making sure that we can educate our workforce, because I think there's still an ignorance across it. Myself personally, I've learned so much from the staff networks. It's invaluable. I think we have a really strong organisation now where poor behaviour is called out, and we've seen that. We've had processes, we've had investigations recently where colleagues have called out the inappropriate activity of others. And you're absolutely right. Some of the reports we've seen in the media from other services are not are nothing apart from horrendous. There can be no place for that in our sector or in our service ourselves. We recently had staff conferences, and the key theme around those was around our culture, around challenging the small acts, those things that can then escalate, and making sure we have that approach within our organisation. So I don't think there's anybody who works for Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service who doesn't know our expected standards, our expected behaviours, and who knows that this is a really, really important part of us being an outstanding organisation. We need everyone to be able to come to work and be their best. We're not going to do that if they can't be themselves, if they can't bring their true self to work. So I'm confident we will undoubtedly have some people in the organisation who don't share our values and our behaviours. Everywhere, every society, every organisation will have those people. But I think this is becoming a less and less comfortable place for those people to be. And the vast majority of our workforce across stations, across headquarters, across everywhere that we have are outstanding people, I think, who have really strong behaviours and values around those.
Okay, you've got safeguarding
Far
to go
bigger,
to. Yeah, we're only halfway through.
Great response, by the way, David.
But it's great to have that conversation, because it is such an important topic, so thank you.
Yeah.
So the second part of the report is around our proactive work we're doing in terms of ensuring the safeguarding of our communities and the training of our staff. So we take this really seriously, and in the report you will see we have a statutory requirement to undertake safeguarding for people who are vulnerable in our communities, and we also have a moral duty in terms of that too. In the period of reporting, which was 1st of August 22 to 31st of July 2023, we referred 27 individuals either into the city or county multi-agency safeguarding hubs who we deemed at risk. 19 of those were adults, and sadly 8 of those were children. We continue to train all of our staff. Over 700 of our staff have undertaken the e-learning package, and then 134 members of staff, including myself last week, went on a very informative level 3 advanced training course around safeguarding as well. So we are rolling it out, making sure that people have that professional curiosity. We have the benefit of being into many people's homes, as you heard earlier, about 15,000 homes this year, hopefully, in terms of undertaking safe and well visits. If something doesn't feel right, we want staff to make sure they're confident to report that. We have a safeguarding strategic lead, which is myself. We also have a delivery lead who works with our prevention team, and we have good representation across city and county safeguarding boards as an integral member of those. We're also proud to be part of the Safer Streets collaboration in the city. This campaign looks at reducing violence, particularly against women and girls. And we've seen coordinated provision of safe space training, so people can report to our fire stations as a place of safety. We have seen people take that provision up recently. We're also targeting the nighttime economy through things such as making sure we have a visible presence in communities and we can challenge inappropriate behaviour. We're quite proud of our fire appliance, which has had the wrapping London Road fire station, which you can see in the image there at the end of the report, just to really overtly state our commitment to this cause. So there's a couple of recommendations, Chair. One of those to note the contents report to endorse our approach, but also to receive that updated review every 12 months in terms of the outcomes of that safeguarding.
Thank you. A lot to unpack in the item. Safer Streets funding and programmes, certainly safe spaces, is much broader than the Nottingham City. Are our stations where they are appropriately placed all going to be accredited as safe spaces?
We are very keen to work with district councils and with the county council equally as we have in the city, and there's definitely scope for that. What I would say is that our stations across the whole city and county provide a safe space. We had a station, we had a case where a station in the county just a couple of weeks ago had somebody report who was a victim of modern slavery. They'd managed to remove themselves from that situation. The first place they came to was one of our fire stations. That person was taken in, cared for by crews, referred, involved the police, and they've received the appropriate safeguarding to make sure that they can come away from that. So I think whether or not they're a designated safe space, all of our fire stations are safe spaces for communities. And I think, again, I mentioned a few times today, we have that privileged position in our communities where people see us as a friendly service who they can approach. So very keen to expand those opportunities if they can come forward formally as well.
I shall see you after.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Are there any other questions, comments on this report?
No, just to add what I said earlier about the consideration around the enhanced CRB check as a blanket option potentially. I know you did say the conversations were going to take place, but I think it's become an industry standard now within local authorities, the police service, and I do definitely take on board what you're saying, but it's always good to know, as kind of Nick alluded to, the makeup of your workforce, good or bad. We've got things in place from a safety perspective around GDPR anyway, so really that information shouldn't bring anyone under any chastisation or discrimination or adverse behaviour towards them if they've done something previous. So I think for me it'd be nice to probably get a note on that, and also kind of some of the efforts that you're making around addressing issues around groups and behavioural standards expected, and the report that you've said about the whistleblowing line, just so we know collectively issues that are arising, and if there's any input that we can kind of support you with to get those issues addressed, that'd be really helpful.
Well, if we can accept these recommendations, Damien, are you all right to collate that as an answer to all members, send it whether we are able to consider the enhancement, and also some of the other things as a brief report about us going forward, copy us all? Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's brilliant, thank you.
And then I can't quite work out if we've only got one item left or two, or
It's a duplication, isn't it?
Is it a duplication?
Yes, yeah.
No, that's all right, we're going to stay later. So this is the final item then, which is the Inspectorate report. It's you again.
Yeah, apologies, my voice a lot this morning, but I will hopefully keep this brief. Members will be aware the inspection of the fire and rescue service in Nottinghamshire was undertaken, and there are 4 areas for improvement identified by His Majesty's Inspectorate. 2 of those were delegated to the Community Safety Committee for oversight and scrutiny whilst we progress through addressing those areas for improvement which were highlighted. The 2 areas, the first one is around the risk-based inspection programme, and that's the work that Andy touched on earlier in terms of how we prioritise the businesses within Nottinghamshire for inspection, so that we inspect those that present the highest risk. And the second one is around making sure that our crews have access to risk information when they respond to incidents through our mobile data terminals. So I'll address those 2 separately and in order. The first one, area for improvement number 2, out of the 4, is the risk-based inspection programme. We are undertaking 2 main pieces of work with this. Firstly, we have an arrangement with Nottinghamshire University, an independent evaluation of the risk-based inspection programme. Members may remember a few years ago, for those of you who were with us at that time, we had an independent review of our Charlie profile, so in terms of our prevention profile, about making sure that we targeted those most vulnerable in our communities. This is very much a similar evaluation of targeting our methodology around the risk-based inspection programme. So that work is ongoing, and we are informed we will get a report on that in early December. So that will give us some external scrutiny. Internally, the National Fire Chiefs Council have just published consultation on a very snappy title, The Guidance on Highest Risk Occupancies and Prioritising Safety Interventions approach. And in a nutshell, that defines the criteria around how they want fire and rescue services to have a standardised approach in terms of looking at those which present the highest risk. That gives us a perfect opportunity to contrast and compare our internal risk methodology with that of the national guidance, and that work's been undertaken by our head of protection as we speak. And again, by the end of the year, we hope to have a gap analysis and understand whether any part of our methodology needs to be amended in terms of those. Once those two pieces of work have been undertaken, we'll feel that we are in a strong position in terms of evaluating our risk-based inspection programme, and we hope to report back to members in spring 2024 that that area for improvement can be assured and closed. So that one is making good progress. Area for improvement 4 is around our mobile data terminals. Now this was an area for improvement in our 2 previous inspections. And when we look nationally, it continues to be an area of focus nationally in the most recent Tranche 3 inspection by His Majesty's Inspectorate. Now that work is being undertaken and continues. The initial area for improvement was closed, and then from the latest inspection there was more. This new area for inspection was highlighted to make sure that that work continued. I can report to members that work does continue. However, there is still the related issues to the provider of our current mobilising system. Members will be aware we're in the process now of procuring a new mobilising system, and that's due for implementation by October 2025. However, we are not in any mindset to rest on our laurels between now and then, so we continue to keep scrutiny over this piece of work. What we are looking at, and we need to be very focused on the area for improvement, is around the provision of risk information. So when firefighters turn up at a building or premises, they can access the information around that risk. What we're doing with that is we're looking at the provision of new secondary devices. So we'll have a fixed terminal in the fire appliance which will provide information. If there are the issues with that device, we will then have a secondary device which allows access to risk information by all of the crews as well. So that is ongoing, and is heavily involved in that in terms of response, working with our head of ICT and the corporate team as well. And we'll make sure that those devices are fit for purpose and rolled out as soon as possible. We are applying close scrutiny to this work stream. The work stream is overseen by myself, and the area managers are delivering that on behalf of their teams. So that secondary replacement device will be rolled out to all frontline appliances, and we anticipate that to be done by the first quarter in 2024 as well. We are monitoring the issues. There are still reliability issues in terms of the fixed data terminals, but this is very much having a sustainable but also assured workaround for the procurement of the new devices in 2025. So again, I'm confident to report to members that that is progressing. We have as much scrutiny as possible over that, and they continue to progress. Hope is that both of those areas for improvement will be able to be closed early in 2024.
Very good. Any questions, Nick?
Sorry, just an observation, obviously, in terms of area improvement 4. We've had this for some time, and I know we're making progress on it. I'm just nervous, I know everybody is, with the new arrangements in terms of the technology. There's anything connected to public sector, ICT you're worried about, but I'm not trying to be flippant. There's not a lot we can do really other than keep monitoring it, is there?
No, absolutely. We are doing it. Andy mentioned the software update, so the current providers are still working with us. It's being managed by the Temporary Assistant Chief Fire Officer for Collaboration and Strategic Collaboration, Mick Sharman, who's working across us and Derbyshire. So I can't sit here today and say there's anything else that we could be doing. We're doing absolutely everything we can to assure that, to make sure that any issues are reported, they're responded to. About 70% of our capacity within ICT is being focused around mobile data terminals and making sure it works and all of that. So yeah, I give you every assurance that we're doing everything we can, but we are certain elements of this situation that we can't affect at the moment, but we're in a process to ultimately come out with a better solution.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're right. There's a lot of nervousness about digital transformation programs, and they're famously over budget or over time, and we're not an organisation that can allow that. So I know this is due to be signed off mid next year, but I think we should perhaps have a running standing item on every agenda to make sure that we're all confident that you're spotting things coming down the line as fast as we can, what the solutions might be. Okay. Is there any other final questions, comments? No? You've got a laugh lightly, David. You've only spoke for an hour. Thank you very much, officers, and thank you all for your attendance. Safe journey home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Good job.